It's getting increasingly more and more difficult with the current state of affairs, with a looming recession and lots of job losses and layoffs happening in the tech industry and all across the board, really. On top of that, there's increasing prices for pretty much every single category of spending, whether it's rent, food, activities for personal enjoyment. We're spending a lot more for a lot less. Job security is an issue as well. So here are 4 ways to improve your resume so that you can stick out when you apply for jobs and get the job that you want. The first one is to have a master resume. What that means is you're gonna write down every single type of job experience, volunteer experience, intern experience, any single thing that you have done that can be used as a skill in your job or any kind of job. You're going to write that down and make points about every single one of those things. Whether it's a skill certification, volunteer experience, babysitting experience, any single thing that you have ever done that can be used in terms of employment, regardless if it was 10 years ago when you were a student still or currently are a student, doesn't matter. Every single thing that you've done, you're going to write it down into this master list. This will reduce the mental workload that you have to do every time you have to create a resume for a specific job. You can just refer back to this master resume and you will have everything right there waiting for you in this big 1, 2, or maybe 3-page document. You'll have everything written out beautifully for yourself in point form or whatever form. It doesn't have to be formatted, but it'll be written out for you to just pull from as you need to for different job applications. For the second tip, you're going to do the same thing, but for your cover letter. You're going to have a master list of different sentences that elaborate on every single skill and point that you've made in your resume. You want to work on well thought out sentences or sentences that maybe aren't super cohesive, but get the idea across for you later on when you come back to your master cover letter so you can make sense of what points you want to make and how you can make them in an effective manner. You can write down your master cover letter in point form and paragraph form, whatever works for you, but you want to elaborate on every single point so that when you come back to it in the future, you have multiple different styles of writing that you can refer back to that can give you ideas on how you can formulate your cover letter for that specific job. In a similar fashion with the master resume, you're going to have a master cover letter that you can pull from whenever you want to apply to a specific job, and you won't have that mental workload again, and you can just pull from these sentences and improve those sentences and put them together in a great cohesive manner to make an amazing cover letter. What I suggest is when you do this for every single job application that you make, your master cover letter that you pull from and the master resume that you pull from and create a new application for, you should save it, label it, and put it in a folder that you can refer back to when you're applying to similar roles in the future. What this will do is it'll make it a lot easier when you're applying for similar positions to just pull from this resume and cover letter that you've created from your masters, and you can tweak it more easily and much more quickly for the specific job that you're applying for. I have suggested these tips for friends and family, and I've used them myself to help improve my chances of creating applications that are successfully viewed and accepted. And I think they're totally worth the initial time investment that you have to make because it makes your life so much easier down the road. Before we move on to the next tip, if you're finding any of this helpful, I would love it if you could leave a comment or a like down below to help support the channel. It means a lot. The third tip I have is to read the job description very carefully. Usually there's very specific instructions that you need to follow in order for the hiring manager or the hiring team to see that you actually care about the job application and did not just mass apply, because they will notice, because they will leave sometimes in job applications to refer to a specific code or refer to a specific sentence that falls somewhere in the middle of the entire job description. And you need to pay attention to those things if you don't want to waste your time randomly applying to jobs. So first, you want to make sure you note the typical things, the general job description and what are the expectations for the job. And then you want to pay attention to very specific key attributes and skills that are necessary for this job. Do they need a certain amount of certifications? Which types of certifications do they need? Do they require a master's, a bachelor's, etc.? I'll go over that in more detail in my job application video on which things to pay attention to a lot more and which things are just really suggestions and fluff on the hiring team's end. Third, you want to take some time to step away from the job description and think about the job that you're applying for. If it's a specific, very specific niche job, or if it's a general job, you want to take note of the specific types of key terms and terminology that they use. So for example, if you want to apply for a job at a bank, they're probably going to use terminology that's related to banking. And it's important to note these terms when you're adjusting your resume and cover letter specific to this specific job application when referring back to your master cover letter and resume. Going back to the bank example, you maybe are just applying for a general position at a bank. They might have general terminology terminology, but if you're looking for example, a mortgage agent position at a bank, you might want to look at specific terminology that's associated not just with banking, but also with being a mortgage agent. If you're having trouble deciphering which of these terms are specific to this specific job, it's also helpful to look up resumes for that specific job and then match it with the job description and see which terms come up all the time and which terms are probably very specific to this job. And obviously, if you're applying for a very specific job, you probably are mostly familiar with this terminology. However, you may not be actively using it in your resume, so it's important to take notes of these different terms. The next thing you want to take really careful note of is the company information. You want to look up the company and understand their mission, vision, values, and what their aim is as a company. And that will then bring us into my next tip, which is to bring all of this information that you've collected together to cater a resume and cover letter that's very specific to that job that you're trying to apply to. So now you have the terms that they like to use, and it's important to use the correct terms so that it shows that you are making a very specific, tailored resume and cover letter for this application. And now that you've done some research on the job description, on the company, and you have a master list to choose from, now you can pull the specific skills and attributes that you have that would be perfect for this specific role, so that it doesn't feel like when the hiring manager sees your resume that they're just looking at a generic resume. They're looking at a resume specific for the job that they want to hire for. The best thing about this is it'll keep you from using redundant, unnecessary words and terminology and make it extremely specific, and it'll show that you've done your work. And this will make you stand out so much compared to everybody else that's mass applying to jobs. Making this very specific resume that is catered to and geared towards that specific job will make you stand out. By using these tips, you'll always be able to end up with a very curated and specific job application without having to spend hours every single time you're trying to apply for jobs, whether it's shortly after creating your master list of resume and cover letters, or maybe 2 or 3 years down the road when you're reapplying for jobs in the future perhaps. You'll never feel overwhelmed in the future when trying to apply for jobs when you do this. So I hope these tips were helpful, and if you found them helpful, definitely leave a comment or a like down below. It really helps support the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video where I show how to apply for jobs in this current market. See you guys in the next one.